I just wanna hear say that her pain was taken away from words that I sang to you. I just wanna hear them say that I changed from niggas who hate, cause that's what we came to do. Baby, tell me, is it words that I say, or what we could be that brings out the freak in you? Lot of feelings I can't really explain, but I ain't ashamed to say I've been needing you. I just wanna hear.
Hey y'all, it's Cheyenne Monet.
And I'm Matt, and you're listening to Sweet 732, the podcast where life is sweet.
And before you do anything, make sure you follow us online at Sweet 732 Pod. And this episode is sponsored by Minwo LLC. Minwo is a community of minority or women business owners known as Minwoners that empower each other to become more financially competitive in their respective markets.
That's Minwo LLC, doing business better together.
All right, let's get into the show.
But she worry about the right now. Like a spare time, stay working, always grinding. But that don't mean that you ain't on my mind. I'm trying to put your feet back, sit you and recline. Leave the past just behind, building what we call ours. Feeling like it's heaven with compared.
So we have two guests here today, and we're very happy that they're here to join us. So Matthew, introduce our guests to our listeners.
With pleasure. So on today's episode, we've got my dear friend and friends of the show, Mr. A.D. Adadapo, and his lovely fiancée, Miss Amanda Brown. Thank you again for joining us, guys. We appreciate you. Studio applause.
I'm so happy to be here.
I love how you give his whole name when you introduce him.
Hey man, you gotta
That's great.
put some respect on it.
All right, so for this episode, we wanted to talk about Black history and film. So with the month of February, shortest month of the year, but you know
that's another conversation.
That's another conversation. But for anything, you know, that's Black History Month.
And we've got the highly anticipated release of Black Panther, as a lot of people may or may not know, is the only, if I'm not mistaken, the only Marvel superhero that is African American, correct?
Yes.
No.
Oh.
No.
That's why we have to bring in.
That's why we got you here.
No. So you're going to unleash the nerd. I apologize.
Let's go.
But no. Black Panther's not the only Black Marvel, but he's the only Black Marvel character with a movie.
Okay.
He's the only Black Marvel character with a movie. He's the first that has a movie, and he's the most iconic because, and for all my nerds out there, don't step on my toes. I'm gonna make a small reveal here. He's also one of the love interests of Storm. So that is So there might be a little reveal in the movie.
I wonder if Halle Berry will carry on as Storm.
No, it's another character. She's in the movie, but it's another character.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just gonna drop that.
Spoiler alert.
Well, for our listeners, we're recording this before the Black Panther movie comes out, so we haven't seen it. So we've just seen the previews and things like that. But yes, we wanted to talk about Black history in the film on a variety of different spectrums, and we thought that AD and Amanda were going to be perfect people for this because AD told us last time we saw him that they had these movie passes that they see. Like, how does it work? You have so many movies a month or something?
I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, sure. So when somebody told me about the movie pass, I thought it was a lie. So I did some further investigation myself. So it works as just like your Netflix subscription. You pay $9.99 a month, and you're able to see any 2D movies as you wish. So you can see one movie a day, and you can see as many movies as you want in a month, but just one a day, and it's $9.99. And most theaters take it: Regal, AMC, even your independent films such as AFI.
And that's $9.99 a month.
Wow! Yeah. So we've been sleeping. Apparently.
Yeah.
Hard.
We've been sleeping. Yeah. So obviously that's something that, that's a great thing for our listeners to know because listen, a movie ticket costs $10 per person, and that's at a good theater. It's like because I'm like, I went somewhere and it was like $13.
$9.10. I was going to say, where
and
are
I'm
you
like,
going?
Do I get a large popcorn with that and the icy? Like,
no, you get a large napkin with that.
Literally.
A large napkin.
A large napkin.
Literally.
And also to be clear for all the nerds out there, Black Panther is the only one with its own independent movie, but other characters that have appeared on screen are Luke Cage, War Machine, Blade, Storm, of course, which we all know. She's been in a bunch of X-Men movies and referenced as many different characters. Nick Fury, who has been played as Samuel L. Jackson. Spider-Man, who is Miles Morales with the new movie that's coming out in 2017 or 2018, the new animated feature. And then Sam Wilson, who is also Falcon. So there have been black characters, but the iconic ism, if that's a word, for the Black Panther film is because it not only encompasses the being a superhero and being a whole movie that embodies everything that is a superhero. He's also an Avenger, but it encompasses blackness, unapologetic blackness.
And that is why I felt like it was great to have this conversation at this particular time, is because I look back at some of the movies that depict our blackness and our narrative, and I've got to say it's a mixed bag. Some of it is great, and for every Hidden Figures and movies like Loving, which I've yet to see, which I need to, because I love that movie when I heard about it.
So good.
You have those movies that depict our narrative, as we've talked about in past episodes, from positions of strength, of resiliency, of holding each other down, and rising to overcome certain things. And then for all of those movies, you have the movies that are like, and not to diminish what all of these films were able to accomplish, but you have the 12 Years and The Birth of a Nations, and it's just kind of like, gee, how many more times are we going to pay $15 a ticket to be reminded that our ancestors were enslaved against their will?
So to wrap up what Matthew said, we're tired of the slave movies.
Yes.
We want more than that. Our people have done more than just be slaves. We've overcome that, which is great. We're glad to see that those movies exist to show people overcoming that. But then now let's show some other movies about people who are really making the difference in just the black community. Right. So I want to ask you guys, what are some of the stories that you would love to see depicted on a film? Are there any specific topics that you would want to see filmed, or any specific people for that matter?
So I have my main three. One is Mae Jemison, which is the first black female astronaut. The reason why Hidden Figures made such record numbers in the theater. It was a little slow opening night, but record numbers towards the end, and also even just being nominated for Academy and all those different things was because it was a story that wasn't told. Exactly. It was, you know what I'm saying? It was the story of Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson, who were played by iconic women who put the first man in space. And people didn't even know that black people were even allowed to have jobs of that nature.
Right.
Exactly. Or smart enough to have those jobs.
In the 1950s.
And let's not even forget, most importantly, these are not black people, these are black women.
Black women. Yes. And then also Bessie Coleman, who is African American and Native American, who was the first black female aviator and or pilot. Again, during a time, I'm talking about 1950s, 1940s, even further back, when it was just a time that you didn't identify a black woman as flying a plane, because when you think of the first female in air, you think of Amelia Earhart,
right?
But you don't think of Bessie Coleman. Well, she was around the exact same time. And then, of course, Madam C.J. Walker, which I recently found out, Octavia Spencer and LeBron James just teamed up to produce a miniseries. And it's either came out already or it's in the works. I haven't seen it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but a Madam C.J. Walker miniseries is coming out, but it's not a full feature film. It's just like a short miniseries. But LeBron James is on the production team.
And thank God, because what I don't want to see, right, as we're having this conversation, I feel like we're gonna come off as kind of, we want a lot, right, as customers.
But we should.
But what I do not want us to do is, I don't want us to put out a movie about some of the people that our children's children, and us should be knowing about. I don't want us to put out movies about those individuals and then Hollywoodize them so they can get onto a big screen and ultimately take away from the story being told in all of its glory and authenticity.
Right. Have to maintain the authenticity of the story.
Right. And for that, I think that miniseries and having them not be an AMC motion picture sometimes, are
a one night only AMC thing.
I think those are in the best interest of the story and the narrative.
Now the short series I think is cool, but depending on what network it's on.
Okay.
Because if it's on the HBO, we all got HBO.
Okay.
So if it's on, and even like everybody doesn't have Netflix, but a lot of people do. I think that's like a great platform, and Netflix has been doing a really good job producing new content. Like their Netflix original content is great. So if Netflix was to like grab a show like that and produce it and be good at it, that can really like do numbers.
Yeah, like like a feature film that I think is not your traditional African American narrative was The Pursuit of Happiness. That was the story of Christopher. It was the story of Christopher Gardner and his son Christopher Gardner, and the story of a black man's just true struggle to greatness. How he just did not stop.
Exactly.
He I mean, of course it was struggle. It was black struggle, and there's plenty of movies of that. But it was just gall and fortitude to get to that goal, and then how he ended up being a multimillionaire and investor and one of the biggest people on Wall Street.
Right.
So that's a story that I would like to see more of, a modern story of blackness, and not so much of the, like you said, the 12 Years a Slave, the Birth of a Nation, and those types of, and
even Django. Like Django wasn't the traditional slave movie, but I just felt like that's another movie where there was just so much things done in that movie for Hollywood that I'm just kind of like, oh, okay.
Right.
Based on a book. Original screenplay, but loosely based on a book. But I have to argue with you, Matt, because I think that Django has its place. You want to know why? Mm-hmm. Because, Birth of a Nation was Nat Turner's story, and that was just like the one opportunity where, slaves rallied together and, got some. Some back, not in a revengeful way, but finally. But it ended up with Nat Turner dying and his bones being crushed and turned into oil. Good God!
And mind you, I was gonna say, I don't think that. So from what I understand about the Nat Turner narrative, I don't believe that he turned himself in, which I felt was how they. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's how they pushed it.
That's how they showed it in the movie.
I don't think he turned himself in
real
life.
He was yes, exactly. Right. Because I was gonna say, there's a difference in between fighting for a cause and not stopping until your very last breath, and then there's giving up.
Right.
And it's a small thing, but in him turning himself in, I'm like, oh well, damn.
Right. Why do we waste an hour and a half here?
Yeah.
Right. Why do we waste this time?
And you know what? Honestly, The Birth of a Nation, I'm not a fan. If I had to choose between two really iconic, in this day and age, because they're more iconic slavery films than, and I did air quotes there, between 12 Years a Slave and Birth of a Nation, I would have to go with Birth of a Nation, because at least for goodness sake it had a good ending. Like, there was a silver lining, the letter was written, and he was freed. And through that, there was a series of experiences that happened throughout that movie.
In 12 you mean
years. 12 years.
In 12 years.
In
12 years of slaves, exactly. But Birth of a Nation, it was gory, first of all.
Yeah, oh my God.
Oh, man.
Yes.
A lot of blood, man.
It was a lot.
A lot of blood.
The scene where they knocked out the slave's teeth.
Thank you. That would stick with me for a long time.
I had to have an internal conversation to determine if I was going to go to work the next day. Seriously, and I'm not even joking.
And this is the issue that I feel I have with those sort of pictures, is that their sole intention, I feel, is to kind of start conversations amongst other races, so that we understand the other side to an extent. But what happens is when you have these really graphic movies, it's kind of like you create further division.
Oh my God, you walk out of the movie theater being mad at white people.
Literally.
I'm not trying to be mad at white
people. And then not only that, right, but I also feel like it's important for us to, and bringing the conversation full circle, I feel as though it's important for us to show these more positive and uplifting stories and narratives, because imagine, for example, Birth of a Nation. There's a black guy and then there's white people. So if you're not a white guy or a black guy, why would you go see it? If you're a Hispanic person, why are you going to go see Birth of a Nation? That story doesn't really pertain to you. If you're Middle Eastern, why would you go see it? There's nobody that looks like you in that movie. Is that how you want to be entertained? Because that's a little bit weird.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you have, take for example, a story about Madam C.J. Walker. Madam C.J. Walker is black, yes, but she's a woman. Mm-hmm. So regardless of you being Latin or Indian, Native American, Muslim, whatever, you can also be a woman and identify with her on that level.
Right. I mean, she's not just a woman. She influenced the hair industry and changed it as we know it.
Right.
So it's just like, I mean, I know that, she fried and died and we moved away from that as, with the natural hairs and things like that. But still, she was the first ideal or idea of black hair care. We've matured past that and past her, but she was the first, to really take some care and say, all right, how can we stretch these roots, That's what she was thinking about. So yeah, I have to agree. But then there's this thing of like, black experiences too, black experience movies as well, and that's when the Chiracs and the Dear White Peoples.
Oh, Dear White People's great. I heard Chirac was I
didn't
trash.
see Chirac.
Okay, so again, matter of opinion. Chirac, I saw Spike Lee's Ideal. He was really trying to go for like a modern day School Days with gangs.
Oh my gosh, Spike
and
Lee.
Spike Lee,
We'll come back to Spike Lee.
Out, boy. Between that and
School Days with gangs,
that movie and then the one
She's Gotta Have It.
Geez, Spike Lee, what is going on?
I don't know.
Well, hey, Malcolm X. That's all I gotta say.
See, and those sort of stories, like I said, are stories that I feel like depict our story from different positions, which I would preferably like my kids to grow up watching.
Yes,
I don't need my son getting familiar with his ancestors being beaten and tortured.
I mean, they can be familiar with it, but I think it's better to be familiar and be taught that by your parents. But seeing it on film is completely different, and we know that they're exaggerating it because it's a film.
But do we?
Well, we don't necessarily know, but some of that stuff, come on. And the Nat Turner movie, did we need to see?
Some things were definitely done for dramatic effect. And in Django, I mean, Quentin Tarantino is renowned for gore, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So there were some things in that movie where I'm just kind of like, is this really happening right now?
Oh no, Quentin Tarantino is known for blood.
Yeah,
yes. Lots of it.
Yes.
Unnecessarily amounts of it. So, and he's also known for the zoom in, zoom out, which happened in the movie as well. I'm just a fan of him anyway. I mean, but oh my gosh, I can just go down the list of just like you said, just unnecessary.
Yeah.
But is there any movies? Name one. If you can, I'll give you 5 seconds of a movie about an indentured servant.
No. Well, the butler wasn't an
indentured servant. I mean white slave.
Oh no.
Because
they won't be set in America, in the antebellum America.
So why is there this big pot of movies about black slaves?
Yeah.
Like, don't you think? Look, just follow me. I don't think that was Nate
Parker.
Nate Parker, thank you. I don't think that was Nate Parker's intention at all. In 12 Years a Slave, it was Brad Pitt was on the producing team. He wasn't the only person. There's a few, but that's just the only one that came in my mind. I don't think that's their intention, but I think sometimes, like you said, it's just when you start to see things, there's a certain level of reminder of. It's like there's reminding of trying to remind us of what we used to be.
Right.
Yeah. The thing about films that's very important is that it's a lot. There's imaging in those things, and that to read something is one thing, because when you read things, you can make of it what you want in your mind. But then when you're confronted with seeing it on screen, there's no running away from it. There's no interpreting it through your own lens. It's like, this is what I want you to see of a certain situation. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, as the consumer of that image, you're kind of powerless to make anything more of it than what it is right there.
Right. I want to go back to what Amanda said about The Pursuit of Happiness. I absolutely love that movie. I really do. And the reason I love that movie is not just because the character, Will Smith did a great job, and I love that Jaden was in it, because it was great.
That was little Jaden.
That was little Jaden. Before his dreads and all that stuff he be doing now. But I love that, he was able to actually use his son in the movie. But I think it was perfect because they finally portrayed a single black father. And, we hear a lot about like single black mothers, which is great, nothing against the single black mothers. But there are a lot of single black fathers out there, and their story is not being told. Yeah. I love that movie for that purpose.
And the misconception is that if you're a black father, you're either Superman or you're a deadbeat.
Right. And he kind of, I was going to say he kind of was Superman. He was like juggling a lot.
Yeah, but then there was those moments of vulnerability when he had to lock the bathroom in the subway.
I know.
And him and his baby had to sit in that bathroom.
So sad.
And the crazy part, I don't know if you guys know this. Let me know if you guys do. But at the very end of the movie, very, 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 very last scene when he's walking past his job.
And the real Chris
Gardner with
walks
the 3-piece suit is walking past the actual guy himself, and he's just like the way his stature, he's just like walking strong, because this is his story.
Right.
And this man's a millionaire now, and a lot of those moments actually happen. So.
Right. And just like also in that story, like I just imagine that everyone. I love the fact that everyone always wants to be there for the women and the children. That's great. Perfect. There's a lot of homeless people out on the street, and always first, women and children are first. I get that. You don't want the children to be out on the street, but then also, what about the men? And so in that movie, when they had to be at the center at a certain time, and they're like rushing, taking the bus, taking the train, trying to get to the center on time, and then most of the centers are like, oh, well, we only accept women and children, so you have to leave your son here. And it's like,
I'm gonna leave my son here?
I can't leave my child. I don't know any of you guys. Yeah. So like even those scenes were they were just perfect for me, because it was like, this is really like a single black father, and he's really like putting everything on the line for him and his child to succeed. And these stories are not told enough, and I wish they were told more.
Right.
That guides me to the story of it's nonfiction, but it's Fences.
Yes.
Yeah, we were just talking about that earlier.
We were talking about
Fences, so amazing. Not from a film point, but from a literary point.
Yes.
I'm talking about Shakespeare here. Like
the monologues were perfect.
The monologues were amazing.
Yes.
Like a lot of people don't catch that.
Yes.
Like there was just these long patterns of speech throughout the film
that were well thought out. Well thought out.
And they referred to people in the film that never made a face.
Yes.
They never made a face, and it was almost like seeing a play, but in a movie. And it was based on a play, of course,
Right.
And I believe Denzel produced the play, if I'm wrong. AD?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, him and Viola Davis were a part of the play, and they just reprised the roles.
Okay.
I think, don't quote me, listeners, don't kill me.
Yeah. but Fences, even though he had his struggles, even though he was not a perfect man, it was the story of the average guy.
Right.
When you say like superhero or macho, this guy was he was a trash collector for him.
Right.
He was just trying to meet ends meet. He gave his check to his wife. He went to the bar and he took care of his kids. And that was it.
Right.
That was it. This was everyday life. Everyday life in Fences. And Fences was that good. Absolutely that good.
Right.
Yes. So, Matt, I know you was mentioning some stories earlier that you thought that would be great to be produced in a film to portray our black people. So what were some of those you mentioned earlier?
Just two, right? And this is probably not necessarily new information to a lot of people. Garrett A. Morgan, who is the brother who invented the traffic light.
The brother. Love it.
I think, and now I'm not all that familiar with his story, but again, that's obviously a very necessary element to our everyday life is the traffic light.
Right.
Not just for the purposes of regulating traffic, but there's also cameras which also act in some capacity as a security function.
Right, safety.
Right, and then there's also, pardon me 1 second. There is also, and this is news to me, Daniel H. Williams, whom I came to find today. Although he did not invent the procedure of open heart surgery, he was the first surgeon to successfully complete the procedure. Right. And so, and again, I don't know too much about his story either, but I think that us as a people, as black people, getting familiar with those narratives, again, like we talked about in the last, not the last episode, but a couple episodes prior, us getting familiar with these narratives will not only help us in terms of our education and our well-roundedness and our own culture, it'll also help our children and our children's children to be familiar with seeing these images of positive blackness. We talked about positive black love, but also just positive blackness, which is showing you that regardless of your skin, regardless of your circumstance, you are fully capable, and especially given the times that we're in now, you're fully capable of being all that you want to be and succeeding at the highest level and impacting a change in society for many years to come.
Right. Yeah, that's real. I just randomly had this thought. I don't know if you guys seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire before. Love that movie, and it's not about black people, so I'm just straying off a little bit, but I love it is Bollywood, but I love that movie because it really it was like another example of showing someone who came from like literally the slums, like had absolutely nothing, and it was just him and his brother, and they worked their way up. And you know, like at the end of the movie, spoiler alert for anyone who didn't see the movie, but at the end of the movie, the guy won Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Yeah. And everyone, you know, the producers of the show, they literally were interrogating him, beating this guy because they're thinking that he's cheating. They don't think someone who can come from the slums could be so smart to win this show, to win the $1 million. And I love that movie because at the end, you know, he won. He proved his innocence and proved that he wasn't lying and proved that, you know, I can be that smart. Even though I came from the slums, I have all these experiences that taught me these things. Movies like that is things that I love to see. I love to see kind of the underdog story, but also like the underdog without the slavery. Yeah, if that makes sense.
And I feel like so it's interesting that you mentioned that being a Bollywood narrative, right? That culture has got their own subculture where they have their own people that they champion. They have their own things that they champion. And I feel like within the black culture, we have that too, but it's not obviously exclusive to just us, because a lot of other cultures, to put it frank, kind of bite it. Right. But I think that we've got to do better, and this is another conversation we had, we've got to do better at standing behind these efforts that are geared towards showcasing our people in a positive light. Because say what you want about Birth of a Nation, be it good or bad, correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't supported and received well by the masses in terms of sheer numbers. Right. And so when that happens, you can almost bet that Hollywood and big time studios are not jumping and chomping at the bit to put out another piece that's centered around a prominent figure in American history that just so happens to be black.
Right, exactly.
Well, the movies,
and there's a bunch of
the movies that they go for are just the obvious ones, you know. But what I'm starting to see is the stories that are not told so often, like Marshall, that just came out, that had Chadwick Boseman in it. But the thing I don't like about that, and I actually went and took some time to actually do the research, is that this is the same dude that's played 3 characters.
Yeah, he was Jackie Robinson.
He was Jackie Robinson, and he also was James Brown. Yeah. Really, Hollywood? Right. Really?
Let's give some other people a chance.
Not just that, there are people that look like Thurgood Marshall. Chadwick Boseman's a little too dark for
He wasn't in Selma. That was another guy.
No, that was
or was it him?
No.
I was going to say, because
that was a good movie.
No,
that was a good
Selma
movie.
was a great movie. Until people started getting beat over the head, all type of crazy.
Yeah, that was David Oyelowo.
So that's another thing, right? So in that movie, and a thing that I thought was really cool was, rather than us cast the same people, right, we reached out and got a bunch of new faces. Right. And I think that the male lead and the female lead were both Nigerian, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they were. Yes.
And that's something that I think is dope, because, right, although I always have kind of looked at African black, it's obviously one and the same. But I imagine if you're African, if you're Ghanaian, if you're Kenyan, Somalian, whatever the case may be, you're not going to be surrounded with a bunch of images in Hollywood that look like you and come from the culture, not race, culture that you come from.
Right.
So to have the merging of that specific time frame, and also have it being portrayed by another culture, I think that was great. And ultimately, that sort of stuff is ultimately what's going to help bring us together. And those are the sort of images that I think we need to be striving to see more of.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we're just going back to the Black Panther movie, but there's that pride, because I think that's what the producers intended to go for. Is in the Black Panther movie, he's from a and I won't spoil anything else, but he's from a place that doesn't necessarily exist in the continent of Africa. And
Wakanda.
Wakanda, yeah. Exactly. He's in a place that doesn't. But the really cool part is, like, the guy says Wakanda. He's like, yeah, poor people and riots and things like that. He's like, yeah, it's all a front. He says it's all a front. Because what he says is that behind all that mess, there's this black excellence. Deep down inside the hidden parts of the continent of Africa, there's technology, there's black excellence, there's gems, there's minerals, there's education, there's wealth, there's everything you can think of. And that's the coolness about Black Panther, is that there's this behind, they do not play when they go back to, like, cultural appropriation. I mean, you're talking about Ankara, you're talking about the fabric that a lot of the characters wear, and the tribal markings that they wear, and it's very close to home. Even the accents. I mean, Chadwick Boseman, me my fiance is actually from Nigeria, so me and AD we're listening to his accent, we're like, what did you think, babe?
I mean, so it seems like Chadwick is the safe bet. In all these movies, props to Chadwick. He's getting that money, so you can't be mad at another man getting that money. And I guess the executives are just comfortable with him, So he's
very good to work with.
Yeah, he's played really Jackie, Thurgood, and now he's Black Panther.
Yeah, he's Black Panther. He's highly marketable. But when we heard the ads, we were like, okay,
need some work.
It needs some work, but it's like, what part of? And see, this is why it works, because it's from a place.
Right.
Yeah, where this place doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? If it was a West African accent, then I could have been a little bit more critical. Right. Exactly, but the Wakanda doesn't actually exist, or do we? Or does it?
Right. I mean, I think, like, another thing, like, we need to bring in these newer actors, because there's so many new faces that we haven't seen who are talented. And, like, everyone loves Denzel. But, like, we need a younger face to represent us. Now Denzel's at the time
How many more times are we going to have to see Morgan Freeman and Samuel L. Jackson?
But actually, like, we see the same people. And, like, what's that guy with the eye? You know what I'm talking about? Forrest Whitaker. It's like we always see the same people, and that's great. I think that they're great people. But then what are we gonna do? Like, later on, they're not gonna be here forever. We need some fresh faces. Let's bring these newer people in.
Yeah. And let's just go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I do agree. Like, because I look at Denzel, Will Smith, Morgan Freeman, and Samuel as, like, this era of older actors that our parents grew up with and we're sort of growing up with. But then you have this new generation that have been ushered in, such as Michael B. Jordan
and John Boyega, who was in Star Wars. So and he's also in the new movie with the aliens. Oh gosh, come on, Amanda. Pacific Rim 2. and that movie originally had a white lead. Had a Caucasian lead, and now it's him who's leading that movie. So, and then I think there is a shift happening in film, and I think that there is a new opening. Another opportunity for a lot of young black actors to kind of really make their face in film was Straight Outta Compton. Now you're seeing a lot of those exact same actors. The gentleman that played Dr. Dre, he was in Detroit, and he also is in I believe 42, or he's on a television show on a mainstream channel. He plays a police officer, but now you're starting to see there is that opportunity, but I guess it just sort of takes time. Right. For those actors to kind of come into those iconic roles. But Michael B. Jordan, man, he's crushing it. He's doing him and Lupita, and there was Jay-Z's family reunion. The new video, it just came out like 3 days ago or something like that. I don't know, it's been on Tidal for a while, but I saw it on YouTube, and it had all these, like, new actors in it, and they were all black, and I was like, dang, saying, yeah, I seen this guy, and I was like, okay, so there is a shift happening, but it's just like, but in those big iconic roles, are we still gonna go for Denzel? Are we still gonna go for Lawrence Fishburne? Are we still gonna go for Forrest Whitaker?
Lawrence Fishburne is another one.
But he's moving to the side of producing.
You know, the first movie I ever saw Denzel Washington in, and I think Morgan Freeman was in this too, was Glory. Which was produced back in like the 80s.
Yes.
And I saw that movie in like the 90s, and it's 2018.
Oh my gosh.
It was a good movie, but that just goes to show exactly how long some of these figures have been not only in the business, but how long they've been at the center stage of films.
True.
I think Chadwick is taking that title now.
Oh, Chadwick, he's an Avenger. Come on. But I mean, there are other black guys. I mean, you know, so is Don Cheadle. He's an Avenger too.
Jesus, Don Cheadle's another one.
Don Cheadle, he's an Avenger too. I mean,
and let's be clear, I'm not hating on any of these brothers. I want them to do nothing more than shine, right? Mm-hmm. But what I would love to see Hollywood do is, like AD said, kind of avoid, like, stop with the safe bet stuff, and let's go out and really like cast people that are young and talented and show movies that depict our narrative and our culture in its most authentic form and showcase our excellence across a variety of levels. I'm not trying to see us as slaves, and I'm not trying to see us as football players.
But actually, and also like just like from a picture standpoint, I know we always talk about this, but I never understand why these movies are so dark. Like the slave movies, the coloring is so dark, and it makes you just depressed as soon as you see the movie. And the coloring, yeah, it is. But the coloring really makes a difference. And the show Ozark on Netflix.
So good.
So good. Great show, but I don't like it because it's so dark. The color palette is just so, it doesn't draw. Exactly. It doesn't draw your eyes in.
And the show that, in talking about black entertainment, the show that was like that was Underground.
Oh my gosh. Literally, there were points where we actually couldn't see anybody because the coloring, I mean, they're outside at night, so obviously it's dark.
They're outside black people at night.
Exactly.
It's a wrap.
In black.
It's a wrap, bro.
We're black.
I get it, but then at the same time, it's like, you know, you can add some lighting to it to lighten it up so that I can at least see these slaves running. You know? I can't even see anything.
I see you escape.
Exactly. So it's like we're sitting there, and there's 3 minutes that we're sitting here, and we cannot see anything. We see shadows moving, but you can't even really tell what's going on. And I hate that about some films or some shows and films that they add this color palette that just messes it up. It makes me not want to watch it anymore. I mean, I know we stopped watching Underground for that reason.
Well, that and apparently Underground ran out of money, and now they're
that's true. Yeah, and they wanted Oprah to pick it up, and she was like, "No,
stop. Are you serious?"
Yeah, no. she was like, "Nah."
You know what, and that's what happened to Boondocks. You know, that's what happened to Black Dynamite. Like these good shows. Black Dynamite, I mean, again, pure opinion, but he was awesome. Okay, like that's not necessarily Black history, or Boondocks is not necessarily Black history or anything like that. But that's a Black experience,
right? And it's a part of our history now.
Yeah,
that it's a big part of our history,
right? Like who remembers Boondocks in the newspaper? You know, growing up. So it's just like sitting, and it was also produced by a Black guy who went to University of Maryland.
Exactly.
So, you know,
great school.
Okay.
The flagship.
So sitting there and like watching the show, who cannot identify with one episode or two of Black Dynamite and or Boondocks? Right. You'll sit there and be like, yeah, I've seen that happen.
Speaking of the University of Maryland, I know we've mentioned like the education system before, right? And just how you mentioned like the Boondocks was a great show produced by someone from the University of Maryland. Do you ever hear them talk about that? When they take you on those tours, do they mention that? No, but they take you to that statue of Kermit the Frog. They do that.
Jim Henson.
They're like, oh yeah, Jim Henson went here and he created the Muppets and all that stuff. Great. But let's mention some of these other people who went to the school and who were great people. And like Dominique, what's the last name? Yes.
Dominique Dawes, the gymnast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Went to Maryland.
Class with her.
No one tells that.
Yeah.
And we're straying away from.
Yes, we are. We are.
Sorry. But if we're gonna do it, let's really do it. But Maryland does have a statue of Frederick Douglass on the campus, so a black man has a statue. But he was a former slave, which goes in unison with the theme of.
But let me say something about that, because when they put the statue up, I was still on campus, and I was still going to the University of Maryland, and I went to the unveiling ceremony, which was great. I absolutely loved it. But I just wish you could have heard the individual talk about how much they had to get through to get the statue on campus. He mentioned that he had been trying to get this on campus for 5 to 10 years, and he got so much backlash just to get this statue on campus. And this was actually a white individual, and he was saying how he wanted to get this on campus and what it meant to him and some other people, and what he's done for the community, specifically in the state of Maryland, and why they really want the statue. And the fact that he was just mentioning, like, we wanted to get the statue on campus 10 years ago, and we've been fighting to get the statue on campus. And the fact that they were finally able to do that was a great thing. I love that they had the ceremony to actually unveil it. They had one of the choirs come in, that like African American choirs come in. They sung like some hymns that were great. Like, it was perfect.
Yeah,
I loved it.
His church is in DC.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like,
and his home is on the Eastern Shore.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense. Like, why would he not
exactly
have a statue?
This is his home.
Yeah, he's buried in DC.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's right in DC. His crypt is in DC. So and it makes sense. And I guess that guides us to Dear White People, which is the Black college experience.
Love it.
Outside of School Days. School Days is there's two sides to this. Ooh, and even the Burning Sands, which talks about the Black fraternity experience, which is probably something Andy could probably speak towards, but
or not.
Not in that space at all. Actually, just kidding. Actually, just kidding. But yeah, like there are so many films that portray experiences, which I think should quantify as Black history as well, because that there is Dear White People talks about the Black experience.
Love it.
It's such a good movie, and it's so funny, and it introduces a lot of new faces. Now you see her everywhere. Oh my god!
So are you talking about the movie or the TV show, the series?
No, the movie.
Okay, so I've never seen the movie. I've seen the series before.
Oh, really? I didn't know there was a series.
There's a series on Netflix. So I never seen the movie. I heard the movie was great though.
No, the movie was pretty darn good, and the girl, the main character, I don't have her name immediately in my mind, but she is in Thor now. So in the new Thor, she was in Ragnarok. There are doors opening for a lot of these characters, and going back to the movie itself. Sorry to talk in circles, but that was the truth of being at a predominantly white institution, and having to find your specific circles, and not being a sellout, and do I wear my hair natural, and do I wear my hair with a weave, or there was so many conversations, and even the sexuality conversations of being of expressing coming out as well, and because college is a huge opportunity for that. Ooh, which brings me to another movie, Moonlight. Have any of you guys seen it?
I heard great things about Moonlight.
I've heard about it.
Amazing Black experience. Yes. So again, it's like, it's not. What is Black history when it comes to film? Because a lot of these movies are about experiences, about stories. Yeah. And which was Marshala Ali, and a lot of new faces. Janelle Monáe was in it as well. Yes. And that story was a man who was kind of not necessarily confused. That's not the most politically correct word for it, but a struggle internally with his sexuality, right? Like, and navigating that, and always feeling strange within his own skin, and not truly embracing who he truly was, but navigating that story as a Black man, right? So that it was so good, so well done. Like, it was one of those movies you're just like, wow, know.
So I've got a question before we wrap. And I want all of us to give our answer to this. What do we want to see in terms of, like, if we could send a message to filmmakers, what do we want to see depict, like what sort of images do we want to see depicting our culture? What changes do we want to see, and what do we want to see more of?
I mean, I love just what Amanda was saying, the experiences, the different experiences that people go throughout their lives. I mean, I think that would be just great to see on film. See more of those.
AD?
Yeah, I would agree. More experiences of Black people portrayed in a better light than what we've seen.
Yeah.
I want to see more Black superheroes and fantasy characters. I'm just going to be honest with that. Like, I don't think there's enough. There are too many action movies that have a white cast or token black guy that's just not the main character. I would like to see and you know what, honestly, filmmakers of America and Europe, they don't even have to be Black, but I would like to see some more leads that are women, and I would like to see more leads that are of other cultures, because Caucasian people are not the only ones with superpowers. Just saying.
Sure. Can I just jump onto that? Think about if Harry Potter was Black.
Think about if one of his friends was Black.
If he had one,
he wouldn't have gotten in so much trouble. I'm just telling you that right now. Like,
I think for me, what I've always kind of wanted to see more, and I've heard just in passing about stories from how we derive from Africa and our heritage in terms of being kings and queens of those civilizations. I would love for filmmakers to kind of take a chance and visually express the experiences of our people that reach all the way back to Africa and depict that story. And I think that would be a really, really strong image to leave with this current generation and the generation following it.
Right. And just one more thing I want to add. I really, really, really want to just see these new actors get these opportunities. I know I've said that like at least twice before already, but I really want to see that. And I think it's great for them to have that opportunity and then to be in one film or one show and then transition into something else. And I thought about this because you brought up Burning Sands, and the young man who was the lead character is now the male lead in Grownish. And I'm literally telling Matthew, I'm like, I know this child from somewhere. I don't know where, I know him from somewhere. And I was like, he was in Burning Sands, and I was just like, I was kind of proud. I was just like, I can see the change. I can see how his acting has developed just from Burning Sands to being in Grownish. I can see how he has developed. So I just love it. But let's wrap there, because I know we've kind of been talking in circles and rambling. So let's just wrap there. Do you want to shout out our music?
Yep. Shout out to DL, who again provided us with some great intro and outro music for this episode. If you guys want to learn more about some of the stuff that he's been up to, you can follow him at OTComeUp on Instagram and check him out on his SoundCloud at d.yelv. And you can also listen to his latest album entitled Lose Focus, which is available on Apple Music and SoundCloud as well.
All right, and thank you again for our guests, AD and Amanda, for joining us. I think it was a great conversation. I would love to continue it one day. But thank you guys for joining us. All our listeners, make sure you follow us online at Sweet 732. And this is Sweet 732, where life is sweet. Thanks for listening.
I know we never could be, but you be feeling like the one. She said I know we never could be, but you be feeling like the one. You be feeling like the one. She said I know we never could be, but you be feeling like the one. She said I know we never could be, but you be feeling like the one. You be feeling like the one. She saying how I'm trying to get it with the money coming clean, and it's nothing that she used to. Couple kids with baby daddy, say she all about